Just a reminder, you can catch me recording this podcast live on AMP. AMP is a new live radio app that lets you call in and chat with me in person while recording. Get the app on Apple's App Store and make sure you follow me at John Middlekauff to get notified when I go live. Live on AMP after Thursday Night Football at Lambeau. Though it did not go well for the Packers, the Lions, safe to say, cruise to a victory. We will dive into that game, as well as some other big games. Obviously, the Miami Dolphins headed to Bills Mafia. Lamar Jackson, can he pull a rabbit out of the hat and take on one of the best defenses we've seen in recent memory? And a couple other thoughts before we dive into the Guinness Bold Take of the Week. But first, subscribe to the podcast wherever you may listen. 3 and Out with me, John Middlekauff. If you're watching on YouTube, hammer that like button, subscribe to the page, leave a comment, interact with the people, and check out the volume.com website. We got hats, we got merch. The volume.com's got merch. We got 3 and Out hats. Before we dive into this matchup that we just witnessed, can I tell you about, I saw some people that I always see on Instagram, people going to Lambeau for the first time, people going to like Fenway Park or Wrigley Field for the first time. I've been to none of those 3, though I would love to go. And if you ever want to do something like that, obviously baseball season's over, but go to Lambeau, go to LSU, go to an incredible venue and watch a football game. You want to go to the Red River rivalry, Texas, Oklahoma, and both teams haven't lost. Well, do it on me. Grab your smartphone, download the Gametime app, and when you do, the official ticketing app of this podcast, use the promo code JOHN. That's my name, JOHN, JOHN, and get $20 off your first pair of tickets. Very easy to use, has interactive maps that are priced out as you're looking, even shows you the view of a field, of the concert stage, also concerts and comedy shows. So just download the Gametime app, fastest growing ticketing app in America. Promo code JOHN, $20 off. Can't beat it. Highly recommend it. I use it. You should too. A lot of you have. Keep hammering that promo code. Let's start with those Lions. The Dan Campbell Lions. Let's face it, they look good. They're 3-1 through the first. Technically, it's not actually the quarter of the season now that we got 17 games, but let's just consider it. They've beaten the Chiefs and they've beaten the Packers on the road twice on national television. Those are 2 big-time wins. I don't care if Taylor Swift's boyfriend's injured on the sideline or tonight the Packers are dealing with a ton of injuries. That's impressive win, especially tonight. I mean, they showed up ready to kick the shit out of the Packers. And I wrote down a couple things. First and foremost, you don't need to be an NFL GM, an NFL scout, an NFL coach to see the talent the Lions possess. They have stud impact players everywhere. And let's be honest, at the most important positions, tackle, defensive end, this tight end looks like he has the chance to be a star. Multiple wide receivers, multiple running backs, other good D linemen, good young linebackers. Secondary, question mark. But they're going to play in a game where they're going to control from the line of scrimmage, especially running the ball. So they're going to shorten the game. They're not trying to get in some contest where Jared Goff throws it 55 times a game. But their talent, their drafting these last several years is really impressive. And I never understood the freak out on draft night. How could you take a running back? It's like, well, they just didn't take a running back like the Falcons, which to me made no sense. Like, you already got running backs. You need other positions. They parlayed 6 into 12, which also gave them pick 34 in a draft that was terrible. And they took Gibbs, who I think is going to be a really good player, the running back from Alabama. They also got the tight end from Iowa, who I'm not saying he's George Kittle or TJ Hawkinson, but he sure looks to be in that mold. And they were featuring him tonight. So they not only got a running back who can catch the ball and a very versatile player, but they got a tight end that looks like, and I'm not trying to overreact to 4 games, but he's got a chance to be a stalwart on this team for years to come. So this team is drafted well. They have prioritized the right things. They, I would say, got lucky a little bit in the draft last year with Hutchinson. That's a draft pick when Balky took the Georgia pass rusher. Think he'd like a redo on that one? He would. This Lions team is really, really talented. So obviously the NFL is not college football. Just because you have a really talented team, you're not guaranteed to make the playoffs or to win 11, 12 games. But we've all watched the Lions enough now. At minimum, you've watched them twice. They're pretty good, man. They really are. And Dan Campbell took a lot of shit because everyone's like, oh, what's up with this meathead? And yeah, he, probably chews a log every other day, slams beers, listens to Metallica, and says some stuff that gets aggregated on social media that's kind of funny. And some other coaches may not say. But let's face it, the guy played in the NFL for a long time. His biggest proponents as coaches were Bill Parcells and Sean Payton. And watching this team play this last year, right? They started slow, ended up making a run, ended Rodgers' career with the Packers, and then coming out this season when they kind of had a bullseye on them. And let's face it, I would say in any industry, it's always easier to be the hunter. It's always easier to be when no one's paying attention and you can just, make some ground when no one's looking, gain a little market share. It's a lot harder when everyone's kind of looking at you. And I'm not acting like they're the Bills, the Chiefs, or the 49ers, but no one's overlooking the Lions this year. People take them seriously on a weekly basis. I'll promise you that, right? They just have too much talent. Their season went well last year. They carried it in. They're just too good at too many positions. So teams take them seriously, and they're responding. Last week, they beat the shit out of the Falcons. This week, beside a couple drives from Jordan Love, they worked the Packers. I mean, they showed up in Lambeau. And listen, he doesn't call offense. He obviously doesn't call defense. But he clearly is a huge part of helping to pick these players, of putting this team together, and motivating this group that plays their ass off. And let's be real, they're missing a couple pieces, especially a big one. They drafted Jamison Williams, a couple years ago. Last year he had the ACL, so he didn't play till the end of the season. Then he can't help but make a parlay that probably didn't cash and miss 6 games this year. You add him to the multiple receivers they already have, multiple running backs, that offensive line. I don't see how that you can't take this offense and put it near the top of the league when the dust settles. And they also have an offense that's going to translate. I know this, like the 49ers round 2, I'm not saying they'd be scared of the Lions, that they wouldn't be favored against the Lions, but that's not an easy game. I think this team's talent, when you look at the rest of the NFC, is has some similarities maybe a year or two ago to some of the Eagles, the Cowboys, and the 49ers. Now, I don't think they could beat one of those teams in a playoff game, but it wouldn't be the most shocking thing. They have a lot of things that translate to playoff football. The other thing is, now San Francisco, and because Dallas plays in a dome and Levi Stadium, I mean, it could be a 75-degree day in the middle of January. But if they did have to go on the road to Philly and it was an ugly environment, they can really run the ball, and their defensive line and playing the run, they're good at that. So, and led by Dan Campbell, who, let's face it, you do reflect your head coach in football. And he's a tough guy. He's an intense guy. And when I watch the Lions, I see that, right? What do the Harbaugh brothers always have? That neither of them call plays. They're both CEO, tough, crazy motherfuckers. And when you watch their teams play, for the most part, over the last decade and a half, it reflects them. And when you watch the Lions play the second half of last year and the first half or the first 4 games of this year, you see a lot of Dan Campbell. And last but not least, Jared Goff. I was talking to a buddy in the NFL the other day about scouting quarterbacks and what to look for. And he's like, there's such big lines of delineation. The top guys, once they get rolling, can kind of overcome anything. A guy slipping on a route, a drop pass, getting sacked, guys getting injured, bad play calls. They just can overcome it mentally, physically. They can always move on to the next play. They're unfazed. They can make plays out of nothing. They can just carry you. And then there's this next group who cannot do it nearly at that level. If the Mahomes and the Josh Allens and the Lamars and the Herberts can bail you out a majority of the time, this next group, you'd probably have to cut that percentage in half. But they're still pretty darn good, and you can win a lot of games with them. The Daks, the Cousins. I think Jimmy Garoppolo is not any good anymore, but what he was with San Francisco, Derek Carr for, bits and pieces of his career. And I think Jared Goff is in that. When things are going pretty well and you have a good team around him, you can win a lot of games with this guy. Is he perfect? No. Not a great athlete, doesn't give you much movement. But if you can block for him, the Lions can, dude can sling it. If you can get open for him, he can get you the ball. Obviously, that's happening. If you can run the ball, he's a pretty good quarterback to have. And I think Jared Goff, I think the Lions deserve a lot of credit because when that trade was made for Stafford, it was like, damn, you guys want Jared Goff? And the one thing Brad Holmes said, and I remember this back then, and they've obviously reiterated that all the way till today, is they didn't view Jared Goff as just some throw-in. They wanted him to be their quarterback. They thought he had a lot of football left. And this is the thing about being in, player personnel is just when a lot of people, and listen, sometimes when the entire league and all the fans think this guy stinks, whoever that player may be, they're correct. But sometimes they're not. And that guy still has good football left in him. I've talked about this before. A huge part of any of our lives are have people professionally believe in us. A boss, a mentor, a partner, someone to do business with, whoever. You need proponents professionally. You need people who think you are good, who believe in what you're doing. And let's face it, Sean McVay turned on the guy hard, publicly. It was actually pretty ugly. Sean McVay has gone as far as basically apologized for some of the things he did. Now, Jared Goff was not playing well, but he clearly wasn't just some shot fighter. He wasn't just some scrub, because you've watched him the second half of last season, really a lot of last season, and definitely this year. Like, he just looks like a solid quarterback. Is he going to beat the 49ers or the Eagles come mid-January? Probably not. But it's a big deal if the Lions, I don't know, just win this division. Look at their schedule. They got 12 wins written all over them. You go 12 wins, like that'd be a really, really big muscle flex for Jared Goff, the Lions organization, Dan Campbell. Hat tip to them, because a lot of people thought that they couldn't live up to the hype. Not me. I picked them. And I just bet on the talent. I really did. And I think it's showing when you watch them play. Now let's go to the other team, the Green Bay Packers. Start with the quarterback. Jordan Love is a little Jekyll and a little Hyde, because when he comes out in the third quarter, he looks like a brand new quarterback, moving around, throwing dimes, throwing bombs. You really see the talent. Like, it's clear. Jordan Love, like, we've seen a lot of scrubs play in the NFL the last several years, right? Guys that are just not going to be quarterbacks as a starter in the NFL for long. Zach Wilson, Justin Fields, like Trey Lance is never starting. We've seen a lot of guys. Josh Rosen had a little cup of coffee. He's out. That just cannot play in the NFL. That is not Jordan Love. But I do think he kind of leaves you scratching your head, because back-to-back weeks in the first half. Well, what's going on in the first half? Teams have game plans. Teams are ready. Teams know what you like and don't like to do in terms of they've schemed it up, right? It's very like we're expecting or have a decent idea of what you're going to do. The Saints did last year or last week, and he looked atrocious. And I've gone in kind of wanting to like this guy. I was like, I saw some stuff week one. I was like, I'm interested. Maybe Jordan Love's a little better than I thought. And then you watch the first half of these games and you go, and listen, Aiden Hutchinson looks like Reggie White out there, and their offensive line's getting shoved around. But he also is making some throws that go, that's not even close. And then in the second half, both teams have leads. Obviously, the Saints were up 17-0 in the fourth quarter. Maybe they just, pull their foot off the pedal a little bit. Obviously, the Lions come out. Everyone's backed up a little bit. They don't want to give up any big plays. And he just starts slinging it around. And then he kind of gains some confidence, gains some mojo, and he looks pretty good. But to me, for me to consider him like a good player, he's going to have to start doing this in the first halves. He can't just, I don't care who you are in the NFL, you can't get down big and expect to come back. You have to start the game fast. You have to lead some legitimate drives early in the game when they know what's coming. That's what makes you a legitimate starter. So I would say right now, he clearly does not stink. He clearly is not just like, that was a terrible pick. But I think we got to be hesitant to say the Packers have something. He's a work in progress, rightfully so. I mean, he's a young player, hasn't really played. This is only his fifth start of his NFL career. But they have to figure out, because the only way he can sustain, like the Packers are going to feel good about him being the starter for a while, is he can handle when the game plan, when the other team knows what's coming. Because that's what makes you a viable player. And I think this was my entire take coming into the season. To go from Favre to Rodgers and to just expect a good starter, the law of averages are just not on your side. the history of this position, the unlikelihood, and the Packers historically are one of the great personnel departments in the league. They know what they're doing. They know what they're looking for. And it's just, I just bet against it. And if I had to bet right now, is this guy their starter in 3 years or is this guy not their starter in 3 years? I would probably bet no. That's where I'd put my money. Now, I'd also say, like, I don't view this guy like I do some of those other quarterbacks I listed, but he does leave you scratching your head. He really does. And if I'm the Lions, I don't know if I'm losing much sleep as long as the Packers have him. Now, the Packers, they have been terrible. Special teams has killed them for years. Remember in the playoff game against the Niners a couple years ago, the difference, block, punt, touchdown, ball game, right? Tonight, they're in position, making this comeback, a little like last week. It's like, God, is this deja vu? And Quay Walker, who also I'm pretty sure got in trouble, was it week 17 last year against the Lions in this game? Kind of a boneheaded mistake. Pretty clear that's not allowed anymore, even though he didn't touch the ball. Like, I'm not a stickler for that rule, but it just feels like special teams, defensively, they're just always leaving a little something to be desired. I don't know. I would look at the Packers right now and think, I don't know if they're a playoff team, right? Because if the Lions win this division, you got the Niners, Seattle, the Cowboys, the Eagles. You know, that 7 spot is definitely up for grabs. Someone's got to win it in the South, but I don't know if I see it in the Packers. But who knows? Maybe in the NFC, if you can get close to 9 wins, if you got eight wins going in the last game of the season, you got a chance to get to 9 and 8. Maybe that gets you the 7th seed. But if I'm a Packer fan, taking some pride in last week's win, tonight though was, beside those couple drives in the third quarter, Dan Campbell kind of worked us, and that's not something we're used to. We're back with another week of football, and DraftKings Sportsbook is keeping us in on the NFL action with great offers every single game day. New customers can bet $5 and get $200 instantly in bonus bets. Throw 5 down on any of this week's epic matchups to walk away an instant winner. And DraftKings isn't stopping there. All customers can take advantage of 2 new offers every game day this September. Football's more fun when you're in on the action. So download the app now and sign up with the code JOHN, J-O-H-N. New customers can bet $5 to get $200 instantly in bonus bets. Only on DraftKings Sportsbook, an official betting partner of the NFL. With code JOHN, J-O-H-N. The crown is yours. Okay, let's hit on a couple other games. After week 1 happened, it was hard not to just go, listen, not going to write Josh Allen off and just say this guy's no longer going to be good. You'd be stupid saying that, but that was a very embarrassing performance, and he admitted as such. But it was like, is this guy just going to be this reckless player now? Is this guy going to be a post-Holmgren Brett Favre and just compete to lead the league in interceptions? And are the Bills in some trouble this year, right? Sean McDermott takes back the play calling. And then all of a sudden, the last couple of weeks, the Bills got their swag back. And they demolished their opponents. And now they're playing the Dolphins, who are kind of the talk of the town. Everyone's anointing them, wants to hand them basically the AFC Championship, and just calling McDaniel, Tua, the receivers, just the toast of the town. And I think this is a big moment for the Bills because they're going, wait. We've won this division 3 straight years. We've been one of the league's power. You guys have made the playoffs once during that time as a 7 seed, and we beat you in the playoffs. That was a little close for our liking. But this division comes through us. And to me, once they get their swag back, which they did the last couple of weeks, this to me is a moment for Josh Allen, who he's got a little work to do, but like you throw 3 or 4 touchdowns, you beat this Miami team by 10 plus points. That's how you kind of start your MVP discussion, right? His numbers, if you remove the first game, are pretty good. Throwing dimes, running the ball. He looks awesome, right? You do this against this team. It's one thing to do it against the Commanders. It's another thing to do it against the Raiders. You beat the Miami Dolphins. It's like, okay, week 1 doesn't mean shit. In Buffalo, no excuse to not kind of have a little muscle flex. And this is why we watch sports. The highest paid players, the most talented players at home who have proven more than this Miami team, specifically the other quarterback. And this is also kind of a moment for him to be like, let's pump down the Tua talk a little bit. I'm still the big dog around here. And I'm really excited to watch Josh Allen this week take on a defense that, let's face it, has a good defensive coordinator, but doesn't have that much talent. And is a defense that he should slice and dice. And on the flip side, his coach, who took over the defensive coordinator position, pretty big moment for Sean McDermott. Because let's face it, and I know Colin's a little guilty of this, but he's not alone. A lot of people were a little down on Buffalo coming into this season. Sean McDermott, defensive head coach, what can he really do with the offense? Can he corral Josh Allen? And now Sean McDermott, these last couple of weeks, has really been like, I got one of the best defenses in the league right now. We're getting pressure left and right. No one can score on us. We can dominate. Well, let's see what you can do against Tua. Because here's what I know against Tua. If you do not hit him and you just give him time, and he doesn't even need that much time, he's getting rid of the ball fast. But if you do not touch him, you're going to be in trouble. I don't care if, you're going to need like Deion Sanders and Revis in their prime to cover these wide receivers. And you don't have that. But if you can get pressure and if you can hit him, it's a different ballgame. And that's happened in the past, and he hasn't looked the same. So to me, Josh Allen and Sean McDermott, like, this is a big moment for them to just not just show the Dolphins, but just kind of, hey guys, remember, we've won this division the last 3 years. We're the team that if our defense somehow doesn't give up 48 yards in 2 plays to Kelsey and Tyreek Hill, we're in the AFC Championship game. Now, we did get our ass kicked last year by the Bengals, but we feel we've rallied the troops and we got a good as chance as anybody to be right back in the AFC Championship game. We feel we're better than the Miami Dolphins. You got to do it. And I can't wait to watch this game, right? McDaniel, all those guys, they've earned it. You score 70 points. I don't give a shit if you're playing Cal Poly or UC Davis and you're an NFL team. That's impressive. But that's not real football. It's not going to look like that most games, right? It's going to look like the Patriot game, honestly. That game was a lot closer than, you actually think it was when you were watching it. You're like, how's this game? Hey, they still got a chance? You can play defense against these guys, which is not easy, especially the motions, the shifts. He's moving these guys. It looks like Canadian football out there. 2 guys running 3.940s. But I'm fascinated to watch Josh Allen this weekend. Another guy that I'm just interested to see is, for about 12 months, Lamar Jackson's contract was one of the biggest stories in the NFL, and rightfully so. It's like he had won an MVP. He had resurrected the Ravens. They were at odds over the money. All these different angles of it, like his mom's representing him. Should he take the money? They offered him enough money. They didn't actually offer him enough money. Who fucking knows? But actually, who cares? Because now he's under an enormous contract. And I think he's looked, beside a couple moments last week against Indy, he's looked pretty good. He really has. I mean, he's looked closer to his MVP self. Now, he's got 7 million injuries on his team. I mean, the entire team's injured. And I think this is the type of moment that you pay a guy like this a lot of money for. It's like, yeah, we got all these injuries. We're playing this awesome defense. We're on the road against a divisional opponent. And Lamar Jackson just finds a way to win it. This is why you pay this guy all this money, right? It's for this moment. It's one thing like the Bills beat the Dolphins. Like, yeah, we've been beating the Dolphins. It's not even that crazy. It's another thing when half your starters are out and it's all on you. We pay you to almost overachieve. And I'm fascinated to watch Lamar Jackson against this defense. Reading some quotes from Jim Schwartz. Obviously, their team speed on defense, their physicality. This is just a fantastic matchup. This is just one of the more dynamic quarterbacks we've ever seen from an athletic standpoint, who's also good at football, against a defense that through the first 3 weeks, looks like the steel curtain right now. So if I'm the Ravens, I go, listen, this is on Lamar to just find a way. It's not about stats. It's not about throwing 3 or 4 touchdowns or running for 150 yards. It's just willing our team somehow to a 17-15 victory. Just finding a way to get us to beat a divisional opponent. Because all of a sudden we lose this game. You look up, you're like, we might have some issues. We got a bunch of injuries. We're not guaranteed to win anything. This is why we pay you all this money. And this is why Lamar Jackson wanted all this money. He's a star, and great players sometimes can overcome adversity around them. Bad play calling, injuries, and I'm fascinated to see if Lamar can do it. Another couple guys I'm fascinated to see what happens is the Chargers and the Raiders. Now, the Raiders, their home in Vegas constantly turns into an away game, right? They play the Steelers, it's like 70% Steeler fans. They play the 49ers, it's like 80% Niner fans. They'll play the Chiefs. it'll be a lot of Chiefs fans. I'd say the Denver fans would travel, but who's traveling to watch this Bronco team? When they play a lot of big brands, their fans are going to pack Vegas. The one place Vegas is going to have a true home game is going to be in Los Angeles. Now, listen, Staley, I'm done scratching my head over his crazy fourth down calls. I said it earlier in this week, and I will continue to say that. He's been doing that since the beginning. For those of us that follow this league and follow him closely, we red flagged him early on in his first year for doing stuff like this because it was never working, and he was constantly doing it. He didn't just start last week. That is his MO. But if you lose to the Raiders, like it's hard for me to predict Dean Spanos. I do think if he started 0-3, they would have left him in Minnesota. Maybe it's on the table if he loses this game, but I actually think the Chargers probably win because I think the Raiders are in shambles. If you follow just people on social media, maybe you've seen around the NFL and people that tweet different stats. Tyree Wilson, the guy the Raiders drafted, number 7 overall, they passed on Jalen Carter, which I don't think is totally crazy. But Jalen Carter with Max Crosby probably look like a pretty good duo. Wilson's been objectively a god-awful player. I mean, just terrible. He was one of those swing for the fences that right now the ball is in the catcher's mitt. It's like, we got problems. And the Raiders, they always feel like in this position of they're not making any progress. And I followed this team very closely for over a decade. And it just, every time they take a step forward or 2 steps forward, it feels like they take 7 steps back. And if they lose against the Chargers in front of home fans, they will be getting booed if it's not looking good. The Jimmy Garoppolo signing, and I have a lot of respect for Jimmy. I think what he did with the 49ers, dude was a tough dude. He really was. Limitations as a player, but a guy, if your team was elite, you know, you go to war with the guy. He looks like a shell of himself. He just doesn't look very good. And you can give me, you know, different schemes, relearning an offense, coming from regardless, just pointing and throwing picks to the other team. Like that's Justin Fields, Zach Wilson level stuff. Not a guy who's been a starting quarterback and made $125 million in the league. It's pretty embarrassing. When I watch the Raiders, I think, how long can this continue? How long can you be in a city full of stars, bright lights, and entertainment and just constantly suck? And Gruden was on that 10-year, $100 million contract. He was a made guy unless something like what happened. He was not going to get fired regardless what happened for years. I don't know about Josh McDaniels. I think sometimes you know it right away, right? Maybe I overhyped Brian Daboll. Last year was impressive. I truly believe that. His team wasn't that talented, and he willed them to 9 wins. Coaching, grit, tenacity. They did not have, to me, they were like 80% coaching, 20% talent. Now this year, maybe they're terrible. They lose on Monday Night Football. Maybe they're just not that good. And maybe we anointed Daboll too fast. The thing is, Josh, we saw him, then he went away and just became a coordinator again, but the hype machine, you know, that's a key in the football. Hype machine. Use your national reporters. Have Dan Pompei write this article, how you do a journal. And then it's like, well, I think Josh has figured it out. I bought into it. I was like, God, I'd hire the guy. And then you watch him and you go, this guy's just terrible at his job. I don't think he's a good head coach. Now, he's not doing, well, you could argue Brandon Staley last week kicking the field goal. Sometimes these guys get in these positions, like, what are you doing? How does this make any sense? Now, it's easy for all of us sitting on the couch, eating a bag of Doritos with a Coke Zero in our hand, or Guinness in our hand, watching the game and thinking, it's harder on the sideline. But still, some of these decisions are so egregious. The other thing is the way you build your team. Like, you were the one that brought in Chandler Jones, who was just off the reservation on social media, who you refused to allow around the team because clearly, I don't know, something weird's going on. And I just wonder how long you can keep rolling. It's always easy to say for a fan base, like, hey, man, just suck this year for the coach and then try to get Caleb Williams or Drake May. But if I'm an owner and that guy sucks to get me Drake May or Caleb Williams, there's going to be many months where I sit there, either in my suite watching the game or during the week in all my big homes and whatever rich people sit and hang out at, and think about how much my coach sucks And now all these guys have the money to write, here's $30 million, leave. Because if I think you suck, I can't keep you around. Like Brandon Staley, he's not going to be the coach in 2024. That's a fact. There is no chance on God's green earth Brandon Staley is the Chargers head coach next year. But the Josh McDaniels thing is kind of fascinating. Like, how's this thing going to go? Because I also had the same thought about Belichick and the Patriots. It's like, I like the Cowboys a lot this weekend. And let's say the Cowboys cover the 6.5 and win the game, 30-13 and just kind of dominate them. It's like, I was talking to someone about it that knows Bill, who's been around him back in the day. And I said, you think Bill could ever get fired? He's like, no chance. I'm like, I don't think he gets fired like a Brandon Staley would get fired or a Jim Tom Sula or Freddie Kitchens gets fired. But Bill Belichick's never going to be like, you know what, Robert? I've just lost my fastball. I don't think I can coach this team at a high level anymore. Just let's have a hug. We'll make public statements. You give me a golden parachute, and I'll just go. I guess I can't go with Cougar Linda anymore because we're broken up. I'll just go find a new girlfriend, hang out in Nantucket, and kick it. That's never going to happen. The only way it's like, hey, I don't think it's working out anymore. Like, we've seen it. We've done it. It's kind of over. And if they're staring at a 6-win team, last year they win, you start trending the wrong way year after year. There's no hope either, right? That's the thing with the Raiders. Like, where's your hope? It's like, well, we got Devontae Adams. Well, yeah, he's killing it every game and you're losing. Max Crosby killing it every game and you're losing. Belichick, you don't even have like sweet impact players. Where are we going? What are we going to do? How would we upgrade a quarterback? I don't see it. So I think Belichick's one of the best coaches. If he's the best football coach I've ever seen. And he's one of the all-time greats in any sport, but things come to an end. Things eventually end. The rubber meets the road, especially as you age. The guy's in his early 70s, and he's stubborn as ever. So you start losing these games, which he should. He's a huge underdog. But all of a sudden you look up and you're like, God, they're 2-6. I do think it's on the table this year with the Patriots. And last but not least, I like this guy. I've met him a couple times. Back in the day before this podcast came to the volume, he came on. He's clearly impressive and earned a $100 million contract to come to USC, and people love the guy because he's an offensive innovator. But a lot of people just think like this USC team, like playoff contender. I don't see it. I don't see anything on defense. There's not a physicality about them. There's not a grit to them. Like I like about 8 teams in college football better. Now, they're clearly better than Colorado, right? No one even objectively thinks USC and Colorado rosters are even close. But like USC, like Arizona State last week was a game going into the second half, in the middle of the second half. Because when you're not a tough team and defense isn't a priority, I don't care if you have Caleb Williams throwing to Randy Moss, Barry Sanders, and Terrell Owens. You still are going to give up points. You're going to look up and it's going to be 50-38. It's like, God, what is going on? That is not a recipe to win in the playoffs and definitely a national championship. If the USC is real, I don't think they are. To me, I view them as like a 10-2 team. Some people view them like, I don't even think they'll be in the Pac-12 championship game. And I definitely don't think they're a playoff team given the way this defense is playing. And especially if they play like I think they're going to play on Saturday, I don't expect to change my opinion. But like this is the type game, what did Dan Lanning do? And I know they were hosting the game. They came out and they shoved Colorado around. It's not about Caleb Williams throwing 1,000,000 touchdowns. I know he can do that. I know you're going to score points. Can you shove this team around? Everyone's going to be watching. It's going to be 10+ million people like the NFL. Jay-Z's coming. LeBron and Bronny are coming. Will Ferrell, Snoop Dogg. It's going to be a spectacle. But can you just show up and beat the shit out of them like Oregon did and kind of flex your muscles and show? Now, I don't think that's going to happen. But to me, Lincoln eventually needs to start doing that. Or I don't think he can beat Oregon, Washington, and Utah. Or, he'll win 1 of 3 of those games. There's a toughness to football. You see it with the Lions? What's a big point of difference for the Lions? They're really tough. They're really physical. It's kind of what the Packers lack. And honestly, they've lacked it for a long time. If you gave Aaron Rodgers some of those like tough grittiness that the Steelers have, that the 49ers have, that the Ravens have had over the years, maybe they won some more playoff games, right? I think the Eagles have it now. They just lack it. And when you lack toughness at the highest level of Division I football, and obviously in the NFL, it catches up to you because there's a physicality element to the sport. As the year goes on, the weather changes. Even if you play in Southern California, you're still going to end up in some inclement weathers, whether it be in Washington or Utah. You got to be tough. And I just don't see it. Like, I understand why Colorado's not that tough. They don't have the players. But USC, you've bought half the country the last couple of years. You got all these transfers this offseason from the SEC. Like, can you please show up? Let's do the Guinness bold take of the week. And this is hard because it's like you got to be pretty aggressive. But it's like, I don't want to say something I totally don't believe. Like, the Cardinals are going to beat the 49ers. You know, when I said Alabama last week was going to lose to Ole Miss, I believed that. And I talked to someone that scouts the SEC. He's like, Ole Miss laid an egg. Like, they should be able to win that game. So I didn't even feel that bad. I like my bold take because my bold take of the week, brought to you by Guinness, is Sean Payton, the $90 million coach. Sometimes I hear he's like, he signed a 10-year, $100 million contract. No, he signed a 5-year, $90 million contract. Think like an NBA player. He's getting paid a premium. He's going to Chicago, who everyone's been making fun. Ton of memes out there this week is like, this game should be played at like 3 a.m. Send this game internationally. Agree, funny. I kind of want to keep an eye on this thing because I like the Bears to beat Sean Payton. And if you think last week was bad, and trust me, it was, losing 70-20, but at least you can say, hey, this is the most innovative offense in the league. All this firepower, one of the bright young minds. You lost 70, something we'll never forget, but at least it was to the best offense in the league. You lose to the Chicago Bears, who are objectively like your equal, like just as bad as you, yet you're favored in this game by several points because you got Russell Wilson and they got Justin Fields, who will not be a starting quarterback in the NFL in 2024. I think Eberflus, or as I used to call him, Uberflus, breaks the streak, 13 straight games, and beats. I don't see how you come back. Because the other thing is like, well, you got to show some character, come out swinging after your big loss. Bears had the same thing. I mean, you're basically, that Spider-Man meme where they're looking at each other, same person. I think that's this. Like, what the hell is the difference? I'm taking the Bears at home in just an all-time. Sean Payton's 0-4 in his last 2 losses, Bears, and losing by 50. That is my bold take of the week, brought to you by Guinness. Gather your friends, raise your glasses, and toast to a win. Guinness Drought Stout, imported by Diageo Beer Company, USA, New York, New York. Please drink responsibly.